All right, well, some new beginnings in DC are a mix of cool and we'll see, as far as I'm concerned right now. Hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about, of course, as a DC fan, but also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. That's your first and only warning. Okay, right now we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on October 30th and originally published on October 2nd. First of those being the DC All-In Special Number 1, which is sort of the kickoff to the All-In initiative that's following up Absolute Power. And this is sort of in a one-shot story making good on the promise at the end of Absolute Power of the Justice League Unlimited concept, where they are restarting the Justice League, but now it's going to be much more inclusive. The roster is going to be huge and is basically going to be a who's who of DC superheroes, in some ways obviously reminiscent of the Justice League Unlimited animated series from a number of years ago. There's not a ton that's really revelatory in this issue, apart from Darkseid, I guess, being briefly bonded with the Spectre, but that's done away with by the end of this issue. What actually has me most interested is the little bit of a focus they're giving to Booster Gold and how he's kind of feeling like in this issue, like he's ready to go back to the future and kind of take responsibility for the actions that he committed there, because that's where he's from. He stole some high-tech equipment and time traveled to live here in the past as a superhero with tech from the future. And I thought it was really interesting that he would be thinking, maybe it's time for me to go back and take responsibility for my actions. It's hard to put that what is it, toothpaste back into the bottle or the container or whatever, because anytime a hero is saying to themselves, maybe I should take responsibility for such and such, he did steal that equipment to come back to the past and be a glory hound. And of course, he's gone through some character shaping and development over the years, largely under the pen of Jeff Johns, which I've really appreciated, that kind of maturing of his character. So it would seem to me that putting that suggestion out there would leave us as readers thinking, yeah, that would be a next step for him in his maturity, to go and take responsibility for the things that he did at the start of his career before he had matured. But he gets sidetracked and ends up discovering where Darkseid traveled off to at the end of this encounter, this face-off with the Justice League that was kind of weird and short-lived, because we barely get this glimpse of what? He's bonded with the Spectre? Okay, I guess not anymore. And he got away somewhere. Where is he? Booster Gold finds him, and he's just totally dominating this world, which is apparently going to be this new continuity, the absolute continuity that's going to begin now and existing alongside the mainstream DC universe. But it doesn't look like it's going to be simply DC's version of an ultimate, Marvel line, but something darker, something different. But I'm very interested in a DC universe where basically Darkseid is dominating and the heroes we know are the underdogs. So I'm very curious. We don't get much of a glimpse of that. We'll see more of that coming up. But so far, I'm very interested in what they're going to do with Booster Gold's character journey, and of course, what they're going to do with this absolute version of the DC universe. We'll see. So at this point, going forward, DC for a time is going to be split into two different focuses. One is this absolute continuity that they're developing, and the rest is part of the All-In initiative in the sense of not rebooting, but giving a fresh jumping on point for all of their kind of like most popular books. And of course, Batman is going to be one of those. So Batman 153 is the start of a new storyline still being written by Chip Zdarsky. I was wondering if we would maybe get a break. I felt like his last storyline got a little bit too complicated after a while, but this definitely seems like a fresh start that hopefully won't get as complicated. But now we're in a Gotham City where Bruce Wayne and Wayne Enterprises has invested a ton into helping the city through various social services, social systems, help those that are really struggling in the city to have a chance to really succeed. And crime apparently has gone way down, and Batman is just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though this is what he's been aiming for. And we've got like Edward Nygma, who's been absolved of his crimes because of torture that he endured under Waller. So now he's a free man and is launching, trying to launch a legit company and is hoping to do business with Wayne Enterprises. So they're setting up some things here that I find interesting, but probably the thing I find most interesting is a new quote-unquote superhero that arrives in Gotham. This guy calls himself Commander Star and appears to be another sort of street-level superhero. Doesn't appear to have any superpowers, but he's using like some sharp blades that are almost like Wolverine claws in his costume. But he's decked out in a combination of red, white, and blue with a little bit of gold and a good amount of black in his costume. So it's a bit of a weird look. And he kind of thinks of himself as a patriot. He's named himself Commander Star, so like all appearances would indicate. Okay, so he's kind of like a kind of a goody two-shoes superhero. Well, not really. The edge of the little bit of black in his costume probably should have been the tip-off, but he tells Batman as he's going after a criminal getting away, "Don't worry about the runner, I've got him." And he pulls out a gun with a laser sight on it and takes out the guy's leg. Gives him the thug takes a shot to the leg, or the criminal, whatever it is, takes a shot to the leg, and so it's non-lethal, but he's using a gun, which of course is not going to fly with Batman. But before Batman has a chance to really kind of take him down or bring him to the police or whatever, Vandal Savage, who, in case you didn't know or you forgot, is the police commissioner of Gotham City, he shows up and says, "No, this guy just saved lives, so I'm okay with this guy, and in fact, officers, I want you to arrest Batman." Well, of course, Batman takes off. The whole idea of Vandal Savage being the police commissioner just still seems a bit outlandish to me. His involvement in the last story arc was just one more element that I was like, this story is too busy. It's got too many things going on. Maybe they'll make good on it now with what they do with him as police commissioner, but it just seems a little too bonkers. Even so, we do have an interesting status quo that's being set up where Batman is once again going to be on the run from the police, and I kind of like that early era of Batman and that kind of dynamic, and so I'm looking forward to it again in some form for at least a while. And I think the idea of a superhero that uses guns is interesting, especially if he consistently uses them non-lethally. I think that kind of like puts him in this complex place of, okay, well, he's using weapons that are typically used to be lethal, but if he's using them non-lethally, that challenges the way I think and feel about that character. My hope would be that he would continue to use them non-lethally and put it in this kind of pseudo-uncomfortable gray area, at least as far as comic books go. Of course, in the real world, that's a different issue. But in terms of comic books, it feels like, especially with Batman, it's just like, okay, we don't do guns. Sure, I will like snap some dude's leg in a crazy way that like he's never going to walk again. But no, we mustn't use guns. Those are the weapons of the true bad guy. So the idea of someone using a gun but potentially never using it lethally would be interesting to me. My assumption, and kind of, a little bit cynically, I suppose, is that before long, he's going to use the gun lethally, and then it makes it all too obvious to us as the reader, okay, yes, definitely we should categorize this guy as bad guy. But if they go another route, and maybe have him go the route of, what's the guy who was Captain America for a little while and then became a U.S. agent or whatever, it was just kind of a darker take on Captain America, a little more morally complex. I'm up for that. So I'm hoping that's what we'll see going forward in Batman. Justice Society of America number 12, still being written by Jeff Johns. I wondered if there would maybe be a new writer, but at least with this issue, that doesn't seem to be the case. I felt like last issue 11, they wrapped up the storyline that had been built up to that point way too quickly. It was very unsatisfying. Maybe that was to make room for issue 12, which totally focuses on Courtney Stargirl and the fact that she is graduating from high school. Now, the issue as a whole is, as we come to realize, her giving the speech at her graduation. And we're seeing these big splash pages representing the different eras of Stargirl, both when she was in her own solo book and then eventually when she became part of the Justice Society and just the different adventures they had. So it's a nice callback to these different eras of Jeff Johns, actually, that started with Stargirl and then continued with Justice Society, which really he stuck with for a long time. It was a book of his that I really enjoyed back in the day. And then up to now, where Courtney is finally graduating, and I've got some mixed feelings about this. Anytime that they put an age marker of some kind into the lives of child superheroes, I'm of the mind that because young superheroes, and particularly kids, like true kids, not just like teen superheroes, but kid superheroes, because they're so rare, and especially rarely handled in a way that I think works well for me, I hate to see them grow up and just become another young adult superhero. I think that comics can totally afford to not age their characters up. Even just not even age them up slowly, but just expect that we as readers will accept that over decades, soon we'll be talking about like 100 years of publishing from DC Comics characters. That, you know, we just have learned to accept characters don't age, like the Simpson kids in the Simpsons TV show. I mean, when you are a child, when you are a teen, even just the advancement of 1 year in age, there's so much changing during that time of life that you really just say goodbye to different types of stories that you can tell, even just finishing going through puberty, you know? And in like the second to last page of this story, they kind of make a big deal of showing her in the dentist's office and the dentist saying it's time for the braces to come off. And I feel like that is meant to be a metaphor, like, okay, it's time to grow this character up. And that concerns me because I feel like her being Stargirl has been a significant part of her charm, that innocence, that naivete. And now that she's graduating from high school, she has her braces off. They're only going to increasingly, I think, draw her as like your typical woman figure. And yeah, I would just rather she be a kid. I'd really rather she be a kid. I think what's all too likely to happen is for her to become a girl in name only. You know, much like Supergirl for many, many years, and Batgirl are women in their 20s. These aren't girls anymore, and they're just, for tradition's sake, still being called girls as part of their superhero name. But yeah. So it's cool, you know, they're celebrating the 25th anniversary of Stargirl being created as a character, which I'm like, oh crap, yeah, I definitely feel old. So it's a cool thing to celebrate the anniversary, but this being the move, this being the way it's being celebrated, I think it's only likely to take something away from Stargirl that made her unique compared to many other 20-something, basically, superhero characters in DC Comics. Of course, she's graduating just now. That means she's 18. She's not a 20-something. But once they get to this point, once they get to legal adult age, they kind of all get written, I think, the same, as though they are young women in their early 20s. And so we'll see, but I'm not optimistic about this change. Something that surprised me, though, that I did like was Shazam number 16. Now, it's continuing very much in the vein of the feel it's had up to this point, which is the stakes are very low. It's very much about just adventures, well, just the lives of kids and the kind of relatively trivial things that they encounter, which has its own charm, and I can appreciate that on some level. I think I would rather have a character like that mixed in with other adult characters. So this version of Shazam that's leaning into him being a kid, I think I would more greatly appreciate with him just being in a Justice League book. And that's not a knock on the book. I think this is very unique, and I think could serve a very specific audience that will really appreciate it. I'm just not the audience to really want to be constantly throughout every issue immersed so much in the concerns of children and teenagers. That's just not where I'm at. That said, by the end of this issue, I had to tip my hat to the writer for exploring some fairly sophisticated philosophy a little bit, or maybe human psychology or something, because we're getting this narration happening throughout the issue, starts at the beginning, then picks up again near the end, and we find out it's Mr. Mind, a classic villain of Captain Marvel or Shazam or the Captain or whatever the crap they're calling him now. But anyway, he starts kind of monologuing a bit and talking, kind of breaking the fourth wall and talking to the reader, saying, would you like to hear their thoughts, the children in this story who call themselves heroes? I can hear them, especially this one, the same plea over and over. You're not better than me. I'm better than you. But that's humanity, isn't it? You all want to be special, important. That's why you're listening to me now. It's why you read comics, watch your superhero movies and TV. Because for the hour you indulge in your sad little panacea, you can imagine you are the chosen one. Pretend everyone loves you. Or if it's a story of adversity and trauma and gods, how you suckers love those, you can pretend everyone is wrong about you. Then the fact that you're better than them will be revealed and oh, they'll be sorry. You like that one the best. And then at the very last page, we get a surprisingly dark visual of Mr. Mind coming out of this guy's eyeball whose body he's kind of been possessing. It's really kind of gruesome looking, not what I would expect based on the tone of the issue all the way up to this point. So it's got some contrasting tone here that I appreciate, but I think even more I just appreciate him diving into, or the writer diving into this aspect of why we read comics, why we engage in fiction about heroes, because there's something in us we want to feel special. We feel misunderstood. There's potentially a very sort of selfish fulfillment in our reasons for engaging with stories about superheroes. I say potentially because it's not, a given that that's why we're engaging in stories like this, what we get out of them, but it certainly can be. They certainly lend themselves to that selfish side of us if we just kind of give in to that. We are all kind of the hero in our own stories, and the people that seem to oppose us, well, they're the villains in our stories because we are in the right, they are in the wrong, and the fact that we are in the right will come out in the end, or it should, dang it. So I appreciate on the part of the writer the recognition of this level of interaction and engagement with comics that many times we are not even aware of, that the fact that this is one thing that really appeals to us. I mean, this is a basic principle of advertising and entertainment in general. People are generally not going to want to read stories that point a finger at their own shortcomings. They're going to want to read stories that do not challenge them in that way, but can let them imagine themselves in the role of the hero. But here, through the voice of the villain, we are seeing ourselves as readers be challenged. And I'm hoping that challenge will continue. I really think that's a worthwhile exploration, and it's good for us to engage in entertainment that challenges us and leads us to reflect on those parts of us that are not right, that we need to grow in. Anyway, so very surprised, based on how I've been feeling about Shazam up to this point, that it could have this kind of a point of interest for me, so I'll at least be tuning in for the next issue. My ring selection for this week is the blue ring representing hope, because, there's a lot of we'll see going on in my thinking, but as far as what could happen with the Justice League Unlimited and with Shazam, I don't know if I'm hopeful about where Courtney is headed in Justice Society of America. Some interesting things could be coming with Batman, but we'll see. At the same time, I'm like, well, there are some pieces in place that could result in some really cool things, so I'm hopeful for that, but we'll see. I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. All that stuff is helpful. And then I hope you check out all the other content for you at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.